Welcome back to CARAHCAST, the podcast from CARASOFT, the trusted government IT solutions provider. Subscribe to get the latest technology updates in the public sector. I'm Corey Baumgartner, your host from the CARASOFT production team. On behalf of CARASOFT and Okta, we would like to welcome you to today's podcast, focused around how Spencer Wood, Cybersecurity Advisor for CISA, and Mitch Spalding, Senior Solutions Engineer of SLED from Okta, will explore how agencies are tackling cyber threats to protect critical infrastructure and provide secure services to the people of Ohio.
Hi, everybody. This is our panel on cybersecurity. The questions that you all want to ask, but many times can't be answered, hopefully will be answered by these two gentlemen here. Now, that's putting a lot of pressure on. Right. But thank you all. Thank you all for being here. This has been an incredible 2 sessions in a row, have been fantastic, and these guys will be just great. So let me introduce the topic if I can. Federal, state, and local agencies stand together in the fight to prevent and recover from cyber attacks as their communities increasingly become targets of hackers, from cyber attackers and other cyber criminals. You know that you've seen this in your own communities and probably in your own email, right? The phishing attempts are just out of control. Cybersecurity risks range from data exploitation, insider threats, third-party vulnerabilities as outsourcing increases, ransomware, identity theft, and fraudulent access to state government services. So let's meet our experts today who will explore how agencies are tackling cyber threats and how they are protecting their critical infrastructure in their individual organizations and states. First, let me introduce Spencer Wood. Spencer is a cybersecurity advisor for CISA, which is the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. Spencer, welcome. Please tell us about your background and your work.
Sure. Good afternoon, and we get the envious job of being between you and tacos, which is never a fun thing. So I am one of the cybersecurity advisors here in Ohio with CISA. There's currently 2 of us in Ohio. We're currently in the process of hiring 2 more. The director, I think, just announced yesterday that we had hired over 1,300 people over the past 18 months. So we are a rapidly growing agency. Board knows we need the help in the cybersecurity space. And my role as a cybersecurity advisor is literally that, to advise on cybersecurity best practices. We try to work left of boom, so make sure that we get and work with organizations to help prevent a security incident. But should an incident occur, we help with recover and resiliency. With resiliency being really the kind of the biggest part that we try to help organizations with.
All right, great, welcome. And also with us, Mitch Spalding. Mitch is Senior Solutions Engineer for state, local, and education organizations for Okta. Tell us about your background and your work.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mitch Spalding. So I'm born and raised from Columbus, Ohio, grew up in the central Ohio area, live in Delaware now. A little bit about me. I got my start in identity probably about 6-7 years ago, just working with a consulting company to implement identity solutions. That then led me to Okta, where I really kind of found my passion for solutions engineering. And really what I do is I work with state, local government entities, education institutions, help understand their business challenges and how we can map to solving them from an identity first approach. So that's me.
Wonderful. And I'd like to say that our third panelist, Nathan Norris, Deputy CISO for Operations for the Office of Information Security and Privacy for the Ohio Department of Administrative Services, is not able to join us today due to illness. So we thank him for agreeing to participate and hope we can host him on another future panel. All right, let's start with you, gentlemen. Spencer, how about with you? How do you work with states like Ohio to support the implementation of the federal government's vision and guidance on improving cybersecurity, such as the Zero Trust Cybersecurity Framework and the National Cybersecurity Strategy?
So one of my jobs, again, as a cybersecurity advisor, is to work with stakeholders. We work with stakeholders across all 16 critical infrastructure sectors. And if you boil it down, pretty much almost everyone is in a critical infrastructure sector in one way or the other. With government being one of those, and obviously there's a lot of functions that government runs, whether it's wastewater treatments, transportation, telecommunications, elections, sometimes even electrical, that we want to make sure that we're there to help support the stakeholders and help support their implementation journey on whatever process they want to take. So for example, if they want to go with zero trust, we have a deep bench of technical resources that we can reach back into headquarters and work with people on that. We can also work, whether it's that or things like secure by design, we're working directly with vendors to make sure that the vendors are actually baking security into their products. So for example, a automobile, you don't have to buy the safety features or the security features of your car for the most part. It has airbags, it has a seat belt, it has the bloody little parking sensors or the little light on the mirror or the backup camera. Those are all standard safety. Oh, it really is safety. Standard safety features. Well, software should be the exact same thing. Consumers should not have to be paying extra for some of the very, very standard security and safety features that are out there.
Yeah. So let me ask a question. I mean, zero trust has a lot of implementations, that steps that they're looking for agencies to put in place. Is this proving to be a challenge for state and local organizations?
So I think anything like zero trust, I mean, zero trust is a complete mind shift on how you are providing information access. I mean, literally it is, I trust nothing. And then I have to grant you fine-grained control to literally everything. And that is something that's dramatically different than how we've built networks for the past 20 or 30 years. And zero trust is a journey. I don't know any organizations, maybe Mitch has been lucky enough to work with an organization that says, oh, we implemented zero trust, we're done.
So I have not, but it like you said, it is a journey. It's something that you work toward, right? Start with one facet of zero trust, whether that's identity, whether that's the device, the network, what have you. And then you can build on that and scale and solve other aspects of zero trust. But certainly it's a journey that does take time.
Yeah.
And so, Mitch, let's continue with you. What are some of the persistent challenges that you see state and local organizations and education organizations experiencing?
Yeah, so I've worked with a lot of different state, local entities in Ohio, as well as education institutions. And, outside of, just general patching and, things like that, general security hygiene. One of the persistent cybersecurity challenges I've seen really gets back to just bandwidth and staffing issues. It's far too common, right, that all these different, entities have great cybersecurity initiatives, yet they just don't have enough time and resources to follow through and deliver on them. It's unfortunate, but I think a lot of it does get back to just general, IT budget constraint, and also just the fact that there's a vicious cycle with, turnover in state and local government. You have individuals, who will join a public sector entity, get trained up, learn the systems for a year or two. Then they'll go ahead and take those skills and join a private sector entity, right, at that time. Seen it too often. And then that leads, the individuals who are committed to the public sector mission stretch very thin and having to manage and maintain the status quo. And oftentimes the status quo has been, implemented and managed, for the last 5 to 10 years. And that's not something that's really going to cut it in this day and age against modern cyber adversaries. So when it comes to building resiliency, what I often do from an identity perspective is I look at areas where identity would have the biggest, most monumental impact in the organization. Whether that's starting with multi-factor authentication, layering on multi-factor authentication for sensitive applications, maybe specific admin accounts, then working from there. Or, if it's a more mature organization, looking at, role-based access control as a whole, implementing a solid role-based access control practice, that would be the recommendation in that case. Or if it's just, optimizing identity, being able to implement something like governance for, access certification reviews, basically checks and balances of identity, that's where we go ahead and make that recommendation. That way, of course, we're not, stretching anybody too thin, where we have bandwidth in mind, and we're able to basically get something in that makes an impact versus throwing something, something massive at a given entity and expecting them to do something with it. So in addition to that too, with these different projects that we're working on, we are also looking for areas of, optimization with automation. So being able to basically, from an identity perspective, right, implement something like self-service password reset, self-service account unlock in a secure fashion, being able to use, no-code workflows to be able to automate identity tasks, things that basically take away from tribal knowledge developed when different administrators or analysts leave the organization. Those are all areas that we want to help improve So then that way, individuals and entities alike, they can stay cyber resilient and focus on other important cybersecurity initiatives.
All right, great. Thanks. This is great information. I also want to remind everyone, if you do have a question, just scan the QR code and then questions will pop up on the computer here on my screen. So hopefully I'll get them in for our experts today. So Spencer, let's go back to you and your work at CISA. What are the main cybersecurity challenges and threats facing critical infrastructure in Ohio? We know that we have seen attacks on critical infrastructure. There's a lot of fear about that because just how the geopolitical climate right now. How has that changed over the years, and what's the solution? Is insurance the answer for these carriers? What do they do?
So, I mean, that's kind of a two-part question.
Yes.
So I'll answer the second one first, because it's probably the shortest one. I'm not going to sit here and advocate whether you should or should not have cybersecurity insurance. At the end of the day, that's a risk mitigation decision that your organization needs to take to say, is it worth paying the cybersecurity premiums in order to have coverage in event of a cybersecurity incident? Now, what I will say about cybersecurity insurance is if you have it, make sure you understand the terms and conditions on the underwriting for that insurance. So for example, if the insurance carrier requires that everyone has multi-factor authentication, and then as an organization, you decide, you know what, the police chief or the mayor or the council person, they don't want multi-factor authentication, so that's turned off. And during the investigation process, and an insurance carrier will do an investigation process during a breach, as they find out, well, it was the mayor's account who was compromised, then they kind of almost have a way to get out of paying for the insurance. Now, obviously, the terms and conditions will flow and legal will get involved, and it goes crazy. But make sure that you're at least abiding by what all the terms and conditions are that were established for the underwriting. Now, when it comes to cybersecurity threats that most state and local government, most organizations, to be quite honest, are facing, there are really, I'm going to kind of put them in two different buckets. Bucket number one are cyber criminal actors. They are out, basic ransomware attacks, whether it's starting with business email compromise, stolen credentials, not using MFA. I'm working a case right now where the organization wasn't using MFA and they had VPN credentials stolen. So that's a case that we're actively, literally, that's why I stepped out earlier, was to make a phone call with that stakeholder. But making sure that you're following, again, all those best business practices around multi-factor authentication, keeping patches up, resilient backups, and things like that. And, as the last panel, I think the gentleman was talking about how their solutions are able to restore backups very quickly. Well, cybersecurity actors have gotten wise to that. And they're like, wait a minute, a lot of organizations are able to recover. So the first thing they're going to do after they get on your system, after they get persistence, is they're going to start exfiltrating the data. So they'll start doing exfil, because they know a lot of places are going to go, no, I'm not paying the ransom. Sorry, I don't deal with terrorists. I'm literally not going to pay the ransom. I'll just recover from backups. Or some organizations will say, I'll just start over from scratch because it's cheaper and easier for us to do that. Well, now now the ransomware actors are saying, oh, well, great. If you don't pay us, we will then basically post your information, your most confidential information on the web. And then, literally it's extortion. So that they are exfilling that data and then using it for potentially extortion purposes later. So that's something that we commonly see. And then obviously, you see in the news a lot, nation state actors doing what nation state actors do. Every single nation state actor has their own motives and motivations as to why they are doing things. But a lot of the same basic cyber hygiene techniques, like even Mitch mentioned, making sure that you're patching, making sure that you're keeping up. We publish a catalog called KEVs, or known exploited vulnerabilities, making sure that everything is patched when it comes to that. Because believe it or not, we just released a report, I think 2 weeks ago, talking about the most exploited vulnerabilities in 2022. And a lot of them were patches that came out in 2016, 2017, 2018. So if organizations had just applied those patches, they might have been in a little bit of better shape.
Right. What about third-party vulnerabilities?
So third-party vulnerabilities are definitely a challenge. I think there are a couple different aspects. Part of it is also around our Secure by Design initiative, where we're working directly with large manufacturers. I mean, we'll pick an Okta, but just because he's sitting here, but working with large organizations who sell the software that everyone uses to make sure that they're literally enabling security by default and baking security in by design. Probably a really good, or I'd say it's a win. It's a really positive win. Was the work that Microsoft did at the table again. The work that Microsoft did around breach of several mail accounts that were actually occurring at, I believe, the Department of Commerce, Department of State, and a couple other organizations, where our director worked directly with Microsoft because those organizations were paying for that extra logging. Well, we were able to work with Microsoft and through our joint collaboration defense collaborative to actually make sure that those set of logs were available to all customers free of charge. So that's kind of things that we're trying to do to change the equation to be, again, more secure by design right out of the gate.
Yeah, and just to kind of double click on that secure by design point, this is something that Okta is also driving with some of the different partners and technologies we integrate with. If everyone, pulls out their phone now, they can go to sso.tax. It's basically a wall of shame with all the different vendors who are charging anywhere from, 50 to 100% extra just to enable, basic single sign-on capabilities, which again, that's security by default right there. So we're trying to work with them, basically make it so that way they're not blocking these security technologies. It's, just basic security hygiene principles, behind a paywall. So in that way, again, everyone can get rid of the passwords, right, that are often, being reused and shared amongst individuals. And again, secure by default there. Yep.
All right, so let's go back to zero trust for a minute, if we can, Mitch, and talk about the in a zero trust implementation, identity management is always one of the major pillars. So can you give us any takeaways that you have experienced with your clients that gives people an edge on installing or putting in identity management solutions?
Yeah, of course. So I mean, I think Spencer would probably validate this with me, but like we were talking earlier, zero trust isn't a single solution, single provider, right? If a vendor comes into an office, that you're in and says, "Hey, I can sell you zero trust, out of the box with, a click of the button," they're lying through their teeth, right? It's a journey. It's a, overall architecture approach to solving, for cybersecurity. So what I would recommend there from an identity perspective is really just prioritizing identity, driving identity first, in any kind of zero trust initiative, because it's really going to simplify any kind of zero trust architecture rollout. When you think about it, not only is identity going to be able to provide, stopgap security for your existing security solutions, like again, what you're referencing there, putting MFA on the VPN, that's something that, identity could do, right out of the box right now. But it's also going to make it so in that way, as you go about, acquiring, different zero trust technologies like, secure access service edge technologies to help facilitate, secure network access. Identity is going to already have that integration there to easily go ahead and broker that access to get into those protected resources. And again, I'll put it back at, everyone here. It's great and all that you can have those protected environments with, software defined perimeters, but how are you supposed to verify access, or verify a user identity before getting into, that kind of environment if you're not solving for identity on the front end? So I would note that. And then, in general too, when you are validating and, going through these different identity solution validations, what I always recommend is look for an identity solution that is going to be neutral and independent, right? That plays nicely with everything and enables you to capitalize on your existing security investments you've made into other security or zero trust technologies. As an example, the identity system should be able to basically take feeds, from your endpoint detection response tool, right? That's saying, hey, this user has a device that's protected with EDR services, or the device, risk that the user's trying to leverage to get into this application is relatively low. That should be a signal that's leveraged by the identity solution to make the right access decision. Or again, feeding signals from something like an email security solution. If your email security solution is able to identify very attacked people or, people who are likely to be phished, that should be another signal that's collected by the identity solution to enhance, that those given individuals authentication requirements, right? Put them in a policy that maybe requires more step-up authentication because they are, likely to be phished. So that's what I would, leave everyone. Again, identity can be a really great catalyst for driving zero trust initiatives if you prioritize it.
Are there automation methodologies that can be used or capabilities that can be used that would help with identity management?
Certainly, yeah. So from an automation perspective, like I was kind of talking about earlier, we can leverage, pre-built workflows, right? That are helping automate, specific actions that need to occur in third-party applications. Or you can also use workflows from a security perspective. As an example, you could go ahead and use a workflow to basically say, hey, this individual is trying to log in and access this resource, but they're doing so at 3 a.m. at night. And they're trying to, they just logged in from Columbus, Ohio 1 minute, and 10 minutes later, they're trying to sign in from Singapore, right? Those are all metrics that should be able to be leveraged. And you could then use a workflow, right, to automate that and say, hey, let's go ahead and send out an email to the cybersecurity team saying, hey, this looks a little suspicious. Maybe you want to validate that. Or, maybe even take that a step further, maybe we want to put that individual in a quarantine group, right? That maybe denies access or, prompts for a more stringent authenticator before they can go ahead and access that resource at 3 a.m. on Saturday night, right? So definitely automations are available from a security perspective to overall improve, again, an identity first approach and zero trust.
All right. And do you see that growing in the future? Do either of you think that artificial intelligence, machine learning, those kinds of capabilities are going to have a impact on identity management and some of the other? Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
First, Spencer.
No, I was going to say, with all the fear, uncertainty, and doubt with artificial intelligence, and not saying there aren't some real issues that need to be solved with that, but there's also the pros of artificial intelligence, where kind of like Mitch was talking about, when you're taking that signals intelligence and then you're able to enrich it and detect patterns out of that, whether it's the unnatural movement pattern or wait a minute, I just saw that individual put themselves out of office. Why are they logging in back in the corporate network? Some of that, at the end of the day, that kind of is artificial intelligence based. And, that information, it is going to be a good thing when that kind of gets baked into some of the products.
So you're already sharing a lot of information with critical infrastructure, state governments, local governments. What kind of services does CISA have? How do you operate? Is it just information that you push forward, or do you actually go in with a team and try to help?
So there's several different services that we offer. First of all of our services are at no cost. So our services, they're already paid for. Everyone's federal taxpayers, so you're already paying for our services. So we're always going to say, please take advantage of our no-cost services. Those services can be anywhere from cybersecurity assessments. So we'll come in, it's not an audit, but we'll sit down and work with you. And there's different cybersecurity assessments that we'll go through, whether it's the cybersecurity performance goals to a ransomware readiness assessment, or let's say you're really concerned about your third parties. We'll do an external dependency mapping is what we call it, but basically it's, do you have the right controls around for your third party vendors? And we'll come in and we'll do a survey for you. And we'll do an assessment, and then we'll give you the results of the assessment, and then we'll work with you. And we'll even help present it to your leadership if you want, about where areas of improvement for your team. So maybe potentially funding opportunities, potentially, hey, I need a cybersecurity person. We have none. Sometimes that's literally the recommendations that we'll give. We also provide workshops where we'll sit down with stakeholders, and those workshops can be anywhere from, let's help build an incident response plan, because maybe you don't have an incident response plan. So we'll literally sit down once a month for 6 months or 2 months or whatever it takes. We'll spend an hour or two a day, during that month, and we'll help you build out that incident response plan. And then once you have that incident response plan, or even before that, we'll also work with organizations to do tabletop exercises. And those tabletop exercises can really be focused in 2 different areas. They can be on the very technical, nerdy side, where we're talking about ransomware response and literally what switches you're going to throw when it comes to ransomware, all the way over to business-focused tabletops, where we bring in business organization leaders and we say, okay, the IT guys are busy. The systems have gone away. Now, how are you going to perform your critical business functions? So, for example, because for us, I mean, while we want to prevent a cyber incident from happening in the first place, resilience for a cyber incident is actually probably our most important function. So, because cyber incidents never happen at a good time. They usually happen the day before payrolls do. They happen usually the day before some other major event. They happen before a long holiday weekend. They're always at the worst time. So what we do is we work with organizations to help practice that plan and help build that resiliency. And that resiliency, and I'm going to date myself here, that resiliency can be as simple. I can pick on Mitch on this one. Do you know how to read a paper map, Mitch?
Of course I do. Paper map, yes.
Okay. You'll be surprised how many people in a police dispatch center that are being hired don't know how to read a paper map.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Because they're dependent on CAD, they're dependent on GPS. And when those systems go away, we've literally had chiefs who had to come in and help the kids, when air quote kids, help them process CAD reports or literally manually do those CAD reports because they don't remember how to do maps. So we work with like police jurisdictions, the police chiefs to say, okay, do you have a map wall in your dispatch center? And let's make sure we do that. Let's make sure we're there taught and how to do that. And then on the other side of assisted services, we also offer protective security advisors, which is people that basically help physically keep you safe. So we'll go through and do facility assessments. We'll do active shooter trainings, bomb prevention, and things like that. The last service I'm going to talk about it's a weird one, but it's a really fantastic one. Is our pre-ransomware warning. Technically, it's called a pilot because that's what Congress has authorized us as, but our pre-ransomware warning activities. So what we do is we have relationships with trusted third party, typically cybersecurity researchers, sometimes law enforcement, sometimes the intelligence community, where that we will actually know when there is pre-ransomware activity on your network. Because these cybersecurity researchers have embedded themselves on the adversaries' networks. And sometimes that information is incredibly detailed. It will literally say, again, I'm picking on Mitch, but it's Mitch's computer because we can know it says Mitch PC1.
Yep.
That's the computer name. The username is M Spalding, and it's this IP address, and it's doing this. That threat actor is now pivoting, is going to start, they're enumerating domain controllers, they're doing this, they're doing that. And when I usually have to make those calls, again, they're not at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday or 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, they're usually 4 o'clock on a Friday. I am throwing every single red flag an organization has. They don't know who I am. I'm giving something that's urgent, and I'm giving something that has very specific freaky information. So we try to get people, to know that we will call you if we see some of this type of activity. We will call whoever we have to call to get hold of someone. I have talked to school districts, superintendents. I have talked to the front desk person. I have talked to the help desk technician. I've talked to the CISO. I've talked to the CIO. Basically, if there's a person we can get hold of, we will do that. If we have to arrive on site, we will do that. And then we always tell people, if you get a call from us, make sure you can validate us by calling a local FBI office. So the local FBI office, we work with them very closely. They know who we are. You can also call any of the state fusion centers. And you can also call the 1-800-CISA number. And we never actually provide those numbers. We just let people Google them because I'm providing you a number that seems sketchy too. So we actually want to make sure we actually provide, just call the local FBI, call our hotline, call the fusion center, and they will go ahead and validate us.
Spencer, really quick, do you have a funny story where someone maybe didn't believe you?
Oh, yes. There's a couple different ones. We had a good one where they definitely didn't believe who I was. They had the local sheriff give me a call to make sure I was legit. That was fun. We have
Actually, that's probably a smart thing to do.
That was smart. Yep, that was good.
Process. Yep.
Yep. And then we've also had another one where another colleague was working the incident, and this was in another state. But I had made the initial call because I was the one covering basically that shift that day. And they're like, yeah, we got this scam call from the Spencer Wood guy like a week ago. They're like, who was that? Oh, Spencer Wood. Oh yeah, that was a legit call. They were warning, he was warning you about this pilot and this issue. Oh, so those are the kind of the two different tales there.
That's great. I mean, that's a lot of detail and a lot of information. So obviously that's something that everyone needs to be aware of. So if they need to take advantage of it, they can. So I think this question came in and I'm not sure who it's for. So I'm going to ask you, Mitch.
Sure.
How are professionals monitoring all of the reporting and devices quickly and then getting the information to whoever needs to get it?
Yeah, I think a lot of it kind of gets back to the different technologies that are being leveraged in the environment. When it comes to monitoring and reporting, obviously, SIM tools are really good at that kind of function, right? Being able to basically aggregate all of your different logs from all your different systems and correlate those to, pinpoint, different attack vectors. That's really what those systems are there for. And a lot of different, state, local entities, those are the kind of systems that they're leveraging today to kind of do that. To take that a step further, though, with the device piece, again, the endpoint detection response kind of utilities, they can go ahead and correlate that data with the SIM tool that's being used and basically be able to get, again, device posture, right, for all the different devices in a given organization. Just so in that way, again, they can assess the risk level of those different devices and take action on specific managed devices if needed, if, again, a given device was flagged, for malware or something along those lines. So those two platforms really kind of come together to provide that kind of coverage when it comes to monitoring and devices.
Are there a lot of false negatives that people have to follow up on, or how do they weed out the real from the not real?
Yeah, certainly. I'm probably not the best person to be talking about that. Maybe, Spencer can kind of highlight that piece there from, an actual, implementation perspective.
Yeah. So unfortunately, the technology is still not perfect. So you will get some false positives. You'll get some false negatives. Unfortunately, this is, I hate to say, it's a great reason why we have jobs. Is for us to actually run down those alerts, to run them to ground, to make sure that they are truly a good thing, or there was nothing to worry about, or wait a minute, there is something to worry about. Especially as the adversaries are starting to change their tactics to more living off the land, where Mitch signing on at 2:00 in the morning, that's unusual. Maybe it isn't. Maybe Mitch works all
really
the time.
busy.
Yeah, really busy. But that's unusual. We probably should follow up on that, because there's probably no reason why Mitch should be logging in at 2 a.m. in the morning. So those are some tactics that the adversaries are using.
So their thinking is still required.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, I can't leave it off the machine. All right, so Mitch, I'm going to go back to you. I want to ask if there are other aspects, pardon me, of zero trust that are, that agencies, especially state and local agencies, are really implementing, like multi-factor authentication, endpoint security. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so in my experience, when it's not identity, kind of taking the forefront of a zero trust initiative, it's usually the device, the endpoints, right? A lot of different state and local government entities that I've been working with, they'll go forward and they'll, likely before even prioritizing identity, they'll go ahead and say, hey, we've picked out our, endpoint detection response utility, to basically handle that device pillar of zero trust. And then from there, right, that's their start of their zero trust initiative, their zero trust project, right? Where they're working toward, a holistic, cybersecurity posture, where you're not trusting anybody in any kind of, organization. So again, device is really what I'm seeing being implemented. And again, being able to pick up on those device signals to make sure, if users should be accessing specific information at specific times, that's again, kind of bridging the gap there with identity. But again, when it's not identity, it's usually the device that's kicking off those kind of implementations.
Okay, right, great. So let's talk now about the workforce. It was mentioned earlier, but I'd like to talk about the cybersecurity workforce, because everyone is fighting for the same talent, right? Especially in this field, it seems to be the one field that we can't get enough employees to fill. So how do you develop and train and retain a talented cybersecurity workforce? And what are the methods that you've either seen implemented or you've been talking to your clients about, Mitch, in your case?
Yeah. So when it comes to, retaining talent, one of the things that I've seen really work well in a lot of different organizations is, introducing, weekly team calls, right? Where basically everyone kind of gets together, shares what's going on, in the organization, all that good stuff. But more specifically, when it comes to retaining talent and just showing that people matter in any kind of organization, what we've done in Okta is actually implement, weekly appreciations where, you give a shout out to a team member who maybe helped you with something that, there was some difficulty that you needed to overcome, right? Basically just letting people know that, hey, like, I appreciate you, you matter and you're making a difference in the environment. Those really go a long way when it comes to retainment. Again, just valuing people and their hard work. That's something that I've seen really kind of pay off there, just those appreciations.
How did you get in?
How did I?
Yeah. How did they find you? How did they recruit a guy like you?
So it was actually kind of interesting with me. I think it was kind of right place, right time. I joined Okta right at the height of the pandemic, May 2020. I had already had previous Okta experience and background selling and implementing Okta. So I think it was kind of from a technical side, I was like, all right, cool. Like this guy gets it. He understands, the technology at a base level, right? So that's what really kind of led me to Okta specifically. Again, in my past, when I was implementing, different identity solutions, I managed a lot of different identity platforms in, my consulting days. And for me, it was just one of those things where Okta just made a ton of sense, right? We have 7,600 plus pre-built integrations to tie into, a multitude of different applications and technologies, like, even Rubrik here, being able to tie into that via pre-built integration. That's huge for a lot of different organizations. And in my consulting days, that saved me a lot of time, when I was working with Okta, because I'd go in, set up these different application integrations in a matter of like 5 to 10 minutes sometimes, really critical applications and systems, protecting those with multi-factor. I looked like a superhero for organizations where sometimes that took, weeks and months. So that's why I really wanted to, pivot and join, someone like Okta, where, again, we're doing a lot of really good work in the public sector, protecting, again, critical accounts, powering the mission of the public sector, all that good stuff.
All right. That sounds exciting. What about you?
So I think, and it was actually mentioned, I think, on the first panel where it was talking about, bringing in new talent, bringing in,
Right.
new employees, and I think there's, it's kind of, kind of two-folded. First of all, for, your existing staff, we hear a lot and everyone hears a lot, like, if I train them, they're going to leave. If I give them new skill sets, they will leave. Well, what's the flip side of that? What if you don't train them?
Yeah.
That means they don't have new skill sets. They're not learning. They're not growing. And with, a lot of people, the not growing and not learning is the reason why they leave, because they want to go somewhere where they will learn and they will grow. And I think, exploring either non-traditional employees to bring into, especially cybersecurity. Ironically, some of the best cybersecurity employees are not hardcore IT people. They come from non-traditional roles because they think differently. And therefore they are literally processing information differently. I've had a cybersecurity professional that was a librarian by trade. And you know what? She's amazing, like just amazing, because she processes information differently. She thinks differently. And then looking, and I think this was mentioned earlier, but looking at some juniors and seniors that are coming up through high school. A lot of people don't understand, especially in Ohio, we have this fantastic College Credit Plus program where literally you will be leaving high school sometimes with a 2-year degree. So if you can pick them up as a co-op during the summer or as an intern during the summer, that's a great pipeline to kind of introduce them, to your organization, to technology, and perhaps have a future employee. And whether it's the College Credit Plus program, and I can't remember the name of the actual other program, where they're teaching networking skills like Cisco Academy in high schools, where you're leaving with a Cisco certification. Yeah. Those are great programs where they are literally workforce ready the day they graduate high school. So those are kind of some non-traditional places to pull employees from.
Yeah. The greatest thing is apprenticeships.
Yep.
I think that there are a lot of students that would be interested in technology fields, especially cybersecurity, because it's such a growth industry. But they think, oh, it's going to require some skill set that I don't have or don't have the capacity for, or not interested in. Where actually that's not really true.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's really fascinating. All right. So We just about reached the end of our panel. Give you the opportunity of answering one final question and doing a wrap up. What do the next 5 years look like in the cybersecurity field, and what do you expect to see in terms of threats and capabilities to fight them?
Ooh, that's a good one. I'm going to go with the glasses half full moment. Cybersecurity a lot of times is doom and gloom. I think that, as a nation, as a lot of organizations are starting to see the importance of cybersecurity. Do we have work that we need to do? Absolutely. But as we're starting to introduce things like secure by design, zero trust networking, it'll move the threat factor to something a little bit different, where literally identity will be the most important thing on your network. Firewalls won't matter anymore. Nothing else will matter. Identity is the one thing that will matter here eventually. But I think, as the US invests in more cybersecurity training for younger individuals, cybersecurity training for, existing IT professionals, second career professionals, different options. I think the future is bright.
I agree with you. I think everybody has become a cybersecurity professional to some degree. At least we're aware of it now, right?
Yep.
I mean, how many times have you been phished in the last week? I mean, for me, it seems like it's every day.
Well, I feel like there's also better, awareness training around cybersecurity as well. Again, making strides in that regard. So in that way, people have a little bit more background around cybersecurity. They recognize, not to, click the link from the Nigerian prince, right? Things like that. So we're making strides for sure. But yeah, I mean, kind of, on my perspective around that, while we are really making really good strides in cybersecurity, from a public sector perspective, I will say you will start seeing a lot more politically motivated cyber attacks, targets around specific states, right, that maybe introduce legislators that people disagree with. I've seen that happen before. So those states, right, really any state introducing any kind of legislator, legislation, I should say. They just need to be a little more hyper vigilant around that and expect, when maybe someone, on, Twitter or Reddit, right, they're having some negative impacts to that kind of, bill or item that was passed. They just have to, be again vigilant and make sure that they're protecting the necessary resources.
Do you think states will gear up for the upcoming election? There was a debate last night, the first one, and it seems like that was an issue of contention last year, although it was not proven to be true that there was cybersecurity intervention. But what are your thoughts about that?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I think you're going to see states really ramp up, for this kind of election. Again, every state's going to go, one way or the other, right? And there's always going to be people on every side that doesn't agree with the other person. So however, a given state's votes, that's going to lead to enhanced, cybersecurity risk for sure. And again, they just have to stay ready, be, again, ready to operate and take care of any kind of risk associated with the results of a given election.
So, and I know, first of all, I came from the Secretary of State's office previously, so a lot of election security experience. So I know Ohio is definitely ready for the challenge. And then at the federal government level, CISA, we are working to strongly work with our election partners to advise and offer strategies for them to remediate risk. I will also say that election officials are some of the most resilient people that I have ever seen when it comes to be able to pivot on something. Like literally the day before an election, there's a hurricane, or the day before an election, there's a tornado, or during the election, there's a tornado, or at 4 p.m., there's a guy threatening to bring in a gun, but yet you still have to make sure people's rights are upheld. So, election security is a major item for CISA. We actually director just announced, I believe about 6 weeks ago, some new election security advisor positions that will be complementing us out in the field to actually sit down and work with election officials on ways that they can reduce risk. But at the end of the day, we're here to support the local election officials. They're the ones who administer the elections. They're the ones who count the votes. They're the ones who do everything. So we're here to help support them.
Well, we really appreciate the information. Great information from both of you. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Spencer Wood, Mitch Spalding, for joining us today. And thank you all for being here today for this fabulous symposium.
Thanks for listening, and thank you to our guests, Terry Bettinger, Peter Vaderberg, Sharon Wilhelm, and Jeff Fazik. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to CARAHCAST, and be sure to listen to our other discussions. If you'd like more information on how Carasoft can assist your organization, please visit www.carasoft.com or email us at slgmarketing@carasoft.com. Thanks again for listening, and have a great day.